Welcome back, everyone. We're jumping right in today. In this explainer, we're unpacking a truly fascinating look at human behavior. Look, we all have habits we want to break, right? Whether it's stress eating, smoking, or just mindlessly scrolling through our phones for hours. But despite our absolute best intentions, we fail. A lot. And why is that? Well, it's actually because we're fighting against literally millions of years of evolutionary wiring. It's a tough battle. So today, we're going to explore the groundbreaking work of Dr. Judson Brewer. We're going to figure out exactly why we form these bad habits in the first place, and, more importantly, how a completely counterintuitive shift in your mindset can actually hack your brain's reward system and help you finally break them.
So, it's the universal question, isn't it? Why is it so incredibly hard to simply pay attention and break our worst habits? You know, Dr. Brewer himself faced this exact frustration. When he was first learning to meditate, the instruction he got was so simple. Just pay attention to your breath, and when your mind wanders, bring it back. I mean, it sounds super easy on paper, doesn't it? Yet, he would sit on these silent meditation retreats, literally sweating through his t-shirts in the dead of winter. Seriously, he'd take naps at every single opportunity just because trying to force his brain to focus was, well, it was completely exhausting. He quickly realized that just forcing yourself to pay attention, or forcing yourself to break a habit, is an exhausting, losing battle.
Section 1. The Ancient Habit Loop, and how our brains actually learn to survive.
Okay, so to understand why forcing things just doesn't work, we actually have to look way back in time. See, we're fighting an evolutionarily conserved learning process. In science, they call it positive and negative reinforcement. It boils down to 3 simple steps. Back in our hunter-gatherer days, we'd see food that looked good. That's step 1, the trigger. Our brain would instantly light up and say, calories, survival. So we engage in the behavior. Step 2, we eat the food. It tastes good, right? Especially if it has sugar. Then our body sends a massive reward signal to our brain. Step 3. This creates what's called a context-dependent memory. Our brain learns to remember exactly what we ate and where we found it so we can repeat the whole process next time. Trigger, behavior, reward. It's simple, it's effective, and it was absolutely crucial for surviving in the wild.
But, well, here's where things go completely off the rails for us in the modern world. Our highly creative human brains kind of hijack this deeply ingrained survival loop. Notice how the original survival instinct relies on actual physical hunger as the trigger, but the modern hijack, it swaps out that physical trigger for an emotional one. We feel sad or mad, we eat chocolate or ice cream, and boom, we feel better. It's the exact same process, but an entirely different trigger. Or think back to being a teenager. Maybe we saw the rebel kid smoking. You know, the Marlboro Man wasn't a dork by accident, and we just wanted to be cool. See cool, smoke to be cool, feel good. We've taken this ancient process that was meant to keep us alive and turned it into something that is quite literally killing us today through obesity, smoking, and addiction.
Which brings us to Section 2, why willpower fails us, and the limits of cognitive control.
We ask ourselves this all the time, don't we? Why can't I just use willpower? Well, when we try to do that, we're typically relying on something scientists call cognitive control. This is when we use the prefrontal cortex, which, by the way, is the youngest part of our brain from an evolutionary standpoint, to intellectually understand that a behavior is bad for us and then actively try to force ourselves to stop doing it. Your prefrontal cortex knows perfectly well that you shouldn't eat that 4th cookie. It knows you shouldn't smoke that cigarette, and it tries its absolute hardest to hold you back. You're essentially using pure cognition to control your behavior.
But here is the fatal flaw in that strategy, the big aha moment. The prefrontal cortex is the exact tool we rely on to stop these bad habits, right? But it is literally the very first part of our brain that goes offline when we get stressed out. I mean, think about your own life for a second. When are you most likely to snap at your spouse or yell at your kids, even when you know better? It's when you're stressed or tired. When that cognitive control goes offline, we inevitably fall right back into our old, deeply grooved habit loops. At that point, we literally can't help ourselves.
Moving to Section 3, the mindfulness twist, and stepping into the habit with curiosity. So if fighting our brains doesn't work when we're stressed out, what if we just stopped fighting? What if instead of white-knuckling it, we tapped into that natural reward-based learning process, but added a little mindfulness twist? Dr. Brewer actually tested this radical idea in his lab with people who were trying to quit smoking. And get this, most of these participants had tried to force themselves to quit before and failed, an average of 6 times. But this time, the researchers entirely dropped the concept of forcing. They didn't tell them to resist the urge at all. Actually, they told them the exact opposite. They said, go ahead and smoke, just be really curious about what it's like when you do. They were asked to pay close, active attention to the actual physical experience of their bad habit.
And the absolutely crucial point here is what happens when you actually pay attention. One participant in the study had this incredible revelation, and her quote just perfectly captures the whole method. She said, "Mindful smoking smells like stinky cheese and tastes like chemicals. Yuck." I mean, how great is that? Before this, she knew in her head that smoking was bad for her. That's just cognitive control. But by being curiously aware, she actually tasted the reality of it. She moved from knowledge to wisdom. She moved from just knowing it in her head to knowing it deep in her bones. And this creates what Dr. Brewer calls disenchantment. The spell of the habit is literally broken because you viscerally realize it doesn't actually feel or taste good anymore.
Section 4. The neuroscience of curiosity and how the brain rewires itself.
So by stepping into a craving with curiosity, you're fundamentally changing the mechanics of that habit loop. Usually a craving feels huge, doesn't it? It's overwhelming, like this giant wave that's just going to clubber you. But what does curiosity feel like? It actually feels naturally rewarding. When we get curious, we start to unpack that massive, scary craving into little bite-sized pieces. We notice that a craving is really just a series of passing body sensations. You might think, oh, okay, there's some tightness in my chest right now, or there's some tension in my jaw, or maybe just a general feeling of restlessness. And suddenly, it's not this big, scary monster anymore. It's just manageable data points. You step out of that fear-based reactivity and you become this eager inner scientist, just observing your own body. And I want to emphasize, this isn't just some nice psychological trick. The data proves it is incredibly powerful. When they put this to the test in a study to help people quit smoking, this curiosity-driven mindfulness training was found to be literally twice as effective as the gold standard therapy. Let that sink in, twice as good, and that was achieved simply by stopping the fight, becoming curious, and naturally becoming disenchanted with the habit.
To really understand why it's so much more effective, researchers looked at the brains of experienced meditators, specifically focusing on what's called the default mode network. They found that a very specific region, the posterior cingulate cortex, actually lights up and activates when we get caught up in a craving. You know, when we get sucked into that loop and it just takes us for a ride. But in total contrast, when we let go and simply step out of the process by being curiously aware, this exact same brain region completely quiets down. You're literally turning down the volume on the neural network that drives your addiction just by neutrally observing it. It's fascinating. Okay, Section 5, rewiring your everyday habits and taking that inner scientist into the real world.
So how do we actually apply this in our daily lives without, lugging around an fMRI machine? Well, because memories and habits are context dependent, we need to interrupt the loop right where it happens. This means you can even use an app on your phone to remind you to be mindful right when the urge hits. So here is your new actionable habit loop. Step 1, notice the urge. Just acknowledge it's there. Step 2, get curious about the physical sensations in your body. Step 3, feel the joy of simply letting go of that craving. And step 4, repeat. You are entirely replacing that old, exhausting loop of trigger, behavior, reward with a much, much healthier loop of mindful observation.
Which leaves us with this final thought. We are all faced with endless, exhausting habit loops every single day, aren't we? Maybe it's stress eating, maybe it's checking your email the second you feel bored, or compulsively responding to a text message when you know you should be working. Well, the next time that trigger hits, you have a choice. Are you going to blindly repeat the old cycle, relying on willpower that, let's face it, will eventually fail you, or will you tap into your inherent capacity to get curious, observe the sensation, and finally step out of the loop? The power to break the spell is entirely in your hands and your awareness.